Hello everybody, warm welcome to this S&OP MasterClass from Roima. My name is Søren Hammer Pedersen. On daily basis I work with supply chain planning, and today I'm going to be your host for this podcast. The purpose of these S&OP Masterclasses is that we dive into trending, interesting topics within supply chain planning, try to give you our perspective on these matters, hopefully give you something that you can use in your company, in your daily life, to work with some of these areas. And today's topic is no different. Have you ever seen the movie I, Robot? Maybe some of you have, but basically robots are taking over the world. And you could say, if you look at LinkedIn, at events, at everything that's going on within supply chain planning, that AI is taking over the world, or at least it seems like it. So how do we work with this wave of AI coming upon us in our daily professional lives? And what can we do to avoid the robots taking over? That is the topic of here today. And hopefully, as always, I hope you enjoy the topic. And luckily for you, I'm not alone in the studio. As always, I brought my good friend and colleague, Benjamin Obling. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you.
So we're going to dive into this now. But Benjamin, before we get into this, the few people that don't know Benjamin Obling, a few words on your background on this doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure. So Benjamin Obling, been working with the Pareto IBP project product in Roima for the last 16 years. I'm overall responsible for onboarding new clients on the platform, and also the continuous development and improvements with our existing client base.
Yeah, great, thank you. But let's dive into it. So my
Absolutely.
thought was around this: how do we, with this wave of AI coming in? Basically, the main question is, of course, how do we balance this automation with human judgment so we don't end up in this iRobot situation? But before we get into that, maybe the first area that we could touch upon is, why should people care about this? Of course, they heard a lot about AI, but there's a lot of AI transformation, a lot of talk about it. But what is that you are seeing out there now that makes you think people should be aware here?
Yeah, it's hard not to come with a trivial answer to that, because of course there is a huge potential, and that's obvious for everybody. So of course we want to hunt that. And when you say we don't want the robots to take over, no, not in a sort of a cruel way, of course, but you could say there are a ton of tasks out there where we certainly do want to have them to take over, where they can do a better job, and we can do something which is more fun, work a bit more strategically with the supply chain, for example, instead of pushing data around in Excel sheets and so on, which the AI can do for us. So you can say, short answer is, there is certainly a huge potential. We just need to make sure that we have a grasp of what is going on, so they don't take over and do a lot of bad things very fast.
So what you're saying is that, of course, that we need to dive in. I don't think people disagree on this. We need to dive into the development we have. But what are the things that are lacking at the moment as we see this transformation towards AI also in the planning?
Yeah, one thing you can say, well, information, knowledge, and so on. I guess everybody are a bit sort of, okay, where will it really make a difference in supply chain? We can certainly see how we can use the chatbots in making presentations, in summarizing meetings, coming up with proposals, how to improve supply chain, etc. All of that, it's fantastic. But where we really see it now is in, for example, demand forecasting. So improving that, automating that, improving the accuracy, so you can actually automate it, remove a lot of the manual work, and also improve the accuracy at the same time. You can do that in inventory planning or in master data follow-up, predictions, etc. So there are really a lot of ways where you can improve the supply chain using it.
Yeah, and where some of the issues might come in for some, not to put words in your mouth, but I guess also with all these new functionalities and opportunities coming in, there's also an element of trust and governance. What's your experience there? Is things just well adapted into the company? Everybody's happy and let's move with all this, or what do you see in practice here?
Yeah, no, but I agree, because you could say, of course, there are all the good stuff that we can obtain with the AI. We can improve the accuracy of the forecast, if we take that as a concrete example. But the pitfall or the risk there is also that we'll have less stable models, less stable predictions, because the AI will pick up things, what is signal and what is noise, back to the old disciplines of looking at historical data and different data sources, bringing it together, make a new forecast. If we just feed that, not being critical about how do we teach the algorithm what it should do, or the AI, we might come up with something that will go completely crazy in some of the forecasts, and that's really where we need these guardrails around what the AI predictions are doing, because you could say in the old world, where you had let's say predictable algorithms, where you have if this then that rules, or you're calculating an average or something, you get exactly same result every time, and that's what we're coming from. And we're saying, even you hear people saying computers are never wrong, right? They would repeat everything completely consistent, but that's not true anymore, because in AI it will change, and that there is a randomization built into the AI. And it's a complete black box by definition. So you could say here the predictability of the prediction is something that we'll talk a bit about here. How stable is the prediction? How much can we trust it? And sometimes, how do we avoid that it will go completely crazy and make a forecast or a safety stock or a purchase proposal which is completely out of line, because it's interpreting something as a signal which was actually noise.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a whole, and let's get back to that, the whole discussion around fencing it in. But maybe the interesting point also for listeners is if you need to go this way, how do you find out where to start, what to automate, what not to automate within your supply chain planning?
Yeah, and you could say, one thing is, of course, looking at what are the possibilities, basically listing those, and then looking at the other hand, what would be so that would be in demand forecasting, in safety stock setting, in supply setting, and so on, optimization in that regard, for example, or it could be network optimization. So we have a range of possibilities on one hand. The other hand is, so what are the challenges you have in your company? Basically, you could say, so we do have a problem with our demand forecast. If we don't have the accuracy we would like, or we believe we could get up a higher accuracy, what would be the benefit? What would be the business case around that? So I would say, basically back to the old school, it was a business school teaching, saying build a business case, find out what are the different initiatives, what is then the impact, what is the business case, instead of running. And that's where I say there is a lot of hype still. I think that is going to be reduced quite soon, because I think people are starting to want to see results instead of just something that is made of AI, right? It was almost like in these days, or maybe a bit before, but then you could almost, if it's something with AI, we want one of those, right?
Yes,
let's have two of those. Exactly. But back to basics. Make a business case. How can we release workforce? How can we improve the accuracy? And what is the business case of that?
Okay, but in my perspective, or at least some of the talks I have with the company, there's also at a different level, because you're talking about let's call it level 1, the planning. Okay, how can we optimize the planning? But there's also the element of the connected supply chain. So I think, isn't, in your opinion, also a topic around how can we utilize what we're doing within this planning discipline in other planning disciplines in our company or in other systems, in the sense that these new AI capabilities might provide some excellent data on this. Also thinking the next level, who's going to use this and how can they utilize these new opportunities? That could be a deciding factor also where to start. Where can we connect things, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. And bring the data together, and bring the insights and the AI predictions together. Say as concrete examples, again, could be something you have the demand forecast. So now we know we have a higher forecast using AI. We have a higher forecast accuracy. Now we know what we are going to sell. how can we utilize that? We're obviously utilizing it in purchasing and production planning, but could we take it a step further and say when we have inbound deliveries, for example, in the warehouse, could we also make a prediction on how is that actually going to be picked eventually, so that when we receive the goods, we can also make a prediction on how is it actually going to be picked. So where do we place it in the inventory so that we pick it, so we reduce the number of handling. So that would be one concrete example of where you can utilize the predictions across. So if you basically think, okay, now we can do pretty good predictions on basically everything in the supply chain using AI, how can we then utilize that? Because you could say there will also be other things where the prediction doesn't matter here, because it doesn't change anything. But here there is a business case as example.
Yeah. So when we start to list where to automate, yes, biggest pain, business case. Could we increase the business case by utilizing this? That could improve some. And then maybe as a last step, also the critical decision. Where is where the human needed? Also mapping that out. Okay, already here that this is an area that is highly critical for us. Not only a pain point, but highly critical. There is a need for a human gate here as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you could say one thing of looking at that these guardrails here. One thing is when you look at, to be concrete again, the forecast, the specific forecast for a specific SKU. Then one limitation or fencing or guardrail here could be to say how much can it actually increase or decrease the forecast, so that we know it won't go completely nuts. Okay, that's one way. We need to know that it's ballpark in the range of what we have seen in the history. There can be some trend, seasonality, etc. It can't go exponential increase because it's seeing something. That could be one at a very, very low practical level. Another thing is to define the playing field of the AI. So to say, for example, in the product portfolio, okay, what can we forecast? For example, what should be on inventory? What is the playing field? There we need a human input, because should item number XYZ be on stock, for example? Is that something we'll offer to the customers on stock? Of course, the AI will have a very good input on whether we should move it from a make to stock to a make to order backwards and so on. And that is something that should be automated and where we should utilize the AI. But making that decision is actually a commercial decision. What is the value proposition that the company has towards the customers? What can they get off the shelf, ready, and what can they, in which areas can they actually wait with the lead time, for example?
So that means that, of course, these guards around the AI is then necessary. But you need to think that in already in your prioritization of what to automate, because if you have our little checklist there, so we say, okay, it's a priority, it's a pain, it's a priority, we can use it. Otherwise, there's a big benefit for it. Yes, we can automate it. Check. But then you actually need those two extra steps, saying, okay, how can we then guard the AI on this automation, and how can we optimize the use of the human element as well before you actually do anything. So you have all those steps in to make sure you end up in a good place.
Yeah, because you could say if you just go ahead and then just throw yourself into the arms of a fantastic AI algorithm and then it will make you a new forecast, or it will determine your safety stocks, and so okay, it's just calculating safety stocks. No, it's not. It's actually determining your inventory strategy and your value proposition towards your clients. Don't you want to be deciding something on that? Yes, absolutely. But you could say on the vast majority of SKUs, for example, which also means the vast majority of work, we can completely automate it, or to a very large extent. So it's basically the changes. So defining the playing field. Okay, what do we actually have as a product portfolio in the company? What is phase in? What is phase out, etc. Again, of course, providing alerts on it, proposals, etc. from the AI, but then having the humans deciding on that and setting the guardrails around it. Yeah. Then you can automate it, because if you just let it loose, you will also be able to, and that's the beauty and the horror of the automation. You can also do a lot of very structured, scaled error creation very fast, and we don't want that.
No, right. Of course, and I think that this is a vital point, because in all modesty, where this podcast I think will bring some value to some people out there is what I experience is that step 1, 2, 3 is in place, And also the element of we accept that AI is a black box. I think people will have adapted that now. But what is really missing is the two last steps, meaning how do we guard it and how do we ensure that there is a trust from the people and the right decision. And that is the main point. If you're changing anything out there, it's remembering those two things. Because at the moment, I think there's a lot of frustration around not having the transparency into the black box, basically. Why is it we're seeing those results or recommendations that we are, and accept you're not going to, but you need to guard it then.
Yeah. And that can really be both. It can be like guardrails around, so you cannot go beyond these boundaries of where we allowed. So the playing field, you could say, of the AI. It can also be alert driven to say, okay, if we are now making proposals to purchase or increase inventory of more than X euro, for example, okay, then we'll pop up that needs approval, etc. So there is a workflow around it, because you could say, actually, depending on which algorithms, which AIs you choose to use, you could actually end up in a place where it would be better just to use an average for the forecast. Rolling 12 months average. It's super boring, but it's very stable, right? It won't go completely nuts. You know what will happen approximately. Of course, you will have some outliers from time to time that will increase it a bit and so on. But the AI could interpret that as a completely new level, and you could have something which is very, very high, a very, very high forecast that you throw into the supply chain. And in order to have, ease of mind and know that it's running, it's super complicated. It's a black box. It's a network of weights, etc. in the AI. It is a black box. But as long as you know that, okay, but it's operating within these fences, then I know, okay, it can't be worse than that.
Okay.
I think that is super important. Otherwise, you might even be better off just doing something really simple.
Yeah. So accepting the black box, I also think is a point, but acting upon it then. And that leads me maybe to my next question, because I think some of the big questions out there, of course, is when do we trust the AI? When do we trust the model? And when not to, basically.
Yeah, and you could, and I think that's a bit again back to the predictability of the prediction. Okay, how does that make sense? But you could say here it's really about, okay, how much does the prediction change when the input changes? So if you have something which is you have an area which is quite actually easy to predict, then it's also not a problem to let the AI take over, because it will most certainly do a very good job in almost all cases. If it's something which is actually pretty difficult, so that would be cases like you have lumpy demand, it's slow movers or medium demand and so on. Sometimes it's spiking, sometimes it's spiking 2-3 months in a row. Is that a new level? Is it just a temporary thing and so on? In some cases, if you load, you tell it and show your product portfolio, it will be able to capture those tendencies. In other cases, it might interpret that as a new level, and then it will increase the forecast completely or the safety stock hugely. And I think that's really these let's say risk or pitfalls here.
Yeah.
And then in those cases, then you need to have your judgment around it. But again, if you then have the fences as one, or the other hand, that there is a governance, you could say a technical governance around, you cannot purchase for more than X euro compared to, history, blah, 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 a more simple model, then okay, I'll be alerted if something crazy happens. So if we suddenly purchase a ton of, of this component, which is very expensive with a long lead time and so on, then okay, then I'm alerted. If I buy a ton of O-rings that doesn't cost anything, okay, never mind.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Are there also some areas where we can, again, back to when to trust, when not to, give that level of transparency or certainty, or how can we work within our daily planning to get that gut feeling that this is actually, of course, we can see the results afterwards, but that's a bit too late. But are there any mechanisms where we can work more with the transparency here through reporting, through other means of ensuring that we are going in the right direction planning-wise?
Yeah, you can say one element is also to separate the planning a bit into different elements, and again, to be more concrete than saying, okay, we have when we do a purchase of components, let's split that into we have a safety stock, we have a lead time, we have an MOQ, we have a bill of material, we have a forecast that we have created. So a lot of this will be created by the AI, but it's still put together and calculated at the end using an MRP engine, for example, because then we know, okay, that will do the calculations. If this, then that, multiplying, etc. You can say completely predictable. So now the prediction is predictable of the purchase. And then making sure that all of these different elements, so forecast, safety stock, MOQs, etc., we have the fences in place, so we know, okay, it's not exceeding X amount of euro in change as one, compared to a more simple model, which is not AI driven. So that could be like a rolling 12-month average, for example. And then at the end have this governance around, okay, I will be told if it's now purchasing for more than X euro compared to what is normal, you could say, defined by a more predictable model. Then the AI might be right, but then we'll just go in and review and then say, okay, in this case, it is actually a complete jump up in sales. We need to purchase a lot more. It was super good that we reacted this fast, or the AI did. In this case, yes, we'll go ahead.
Yeah.
But then it won't do it by itself.
And I guess that is also something that over time will increase the effectiveness of this and the whole automation, that if you have seen the, let's say, proof of data through data that it actually works, it's not totally crazy. And if it go crazy, we're gonna either get an alert or it's gonna be stopped in its track. Then this will build the trust we need in the organization. Also, people will start not being in a slight panic over what comes out of the machine.
Exactly. Because you could say the alternative to that, by if we sort of throw ourselves completely into the hands, the way that the AI would learn that is by what is called reinforced learning. So that means that it will try out some things. It has its full network. It's already trained on the history of the behavior in supply chain. Then it will start to do some predictions on when should we purchase and produce and so on. And most of those predictions will be very good, and that's perfect. If we're then using reinforced learning, you might risk, or actually the algorithm, the AI is then told to from time to time try something a bit different, go a bit outside, because it needs to test, are we in, is the weights in the AI, are they correct? Okay, then it needs to try something new. Okay, why don't we purchase a bit more? Let's try it. Let's see how that flies. Okay, that didn't go very well. So okay, we won't do that next time. That it makes sense, but you can say we don't want that. We don't want to try that out and have that trial and error. You can say in many ways that's what we do with the human way of ordering. Let's try to,
Let's try to be better.
Exactly. And then fence it, and then have this question up front before you purchase it. Okay, are we sure? Because here the you could say the predictability of the prediction. So should I purchase? Yes, no. Here it's actually the uncertainty is quite high. We don't know from the algorithm if this actually is correct. But it's a bet. It could be.
Yeah.
Let's try it out. But let's have that workflow around.
Let's hope it's a good
bet.
Good. But I think that's really, really good advice on, you can say, the daily, weekly planning when we work with stuff. But there's also element around the governance. How does this affect our, you can say, standard sales and operation process? Let's say we have a monthly process. Is it just business as usual here when AI comes in, or are there new both possibilities or concerns that we need to be aware of in how we organize ourselves around a sales and operation planning process?
I think to a large extent it's basically enabling that now we can really do it, and we can do it with a higher quality. We can get better forecasts, we can get better capacity simulations, etc. into the future. We can make what if scenarios. Say, okay, what happens if this turns out in a different way? How will that trickle through the supply chain? So one capability you could say there that is a lot easier to do, to set up those those scenarios. Another way is to interpret the results. So basically have the AI to say, okay, so please compare these two scenarios. How does that look? Make the bullets, make the PowerPoints, etc. So you could say all the material for the S&OP, and the analysis again is easier and faster to do, and the whole input for the planning process, so the forecast, the safety stocks, the MOQ, the lead time, etc., will be improved by it with a lower you could say workload. So what we see for example, in demand planning is that the reduction in the manual work around the forecast is reduced by 30 to as much as 70-80%. From prior to using these AI models. So it's very significant, and you could say the people doing that are normally the people working with creating the forecast, creating the supply chain scenarios and so on, are normally a very scarce resource in supply. They're good analysts and so on. But there are a ton of things we want to use them for. So let's use them for that instead. Defining the playing field. What is the value proposition towards the clients? And so on.
And I guess that talks into how we're actually seeing some of the changes in the actual process steps. Because if you take a traditional S&OP process, of course, it's very much around conducting tasks. Okay, prepare the forecast, do that. We need to use our people maybe in a different way. These more have the steps on how to control the AI or approve the AI recommendations more than actually doing the work themselves. So it becomes more of an analyst task we have in our process more than it's do it yourself in Excel kind of thing.
Yeah, and you could say some of it is, of course, you can say in that sense maybe a bit more boring in the sense that, okay, all the forecast is done for you. The inventory optimization on 90-something% is already done. You have the capacity overview, all of that, where you would maybe do a lot of things, push data around in Excel and so on. You don't need to do that anymore. You'll then have you'll have some alerts. Okay, now we've exceeded the boundaries of X euros, blah blah blah. Yes, no, yes. Responding to those alerts. Okay, that's a bit trivial maybe, but you could say it's the analysis around that is interesting. But that's really the very small part of the work you would then do. The larger part is then to say, okay, what if we change the service level towards the clients? What if we open up a new production line? What if demand in Germany increases by 10% on this brand? How will that trickle through? For example, preparing the decision material around that, which is a lot more fun and interesting, I think. Than using Roima models and download data from SAP or whatever. That is actually done in, 70% of the companies today.
Of course.
Waste of time.
So we are changing the process, but also maybe a bit of advice from my side is to remember the communication and the transparency when we move the process from the, let's call it lower level planning towards the end of the executive S&OP, and we remember that we probably have a leadership, a management in a company that is well aware that AI to some extent is a black box and could be scared of what's going to happen here. So really remembering to communicate how we control the AI within the supply chain planning, how we guard it, and how we ensure that we have this human validation as well. That can help us a lot in running this process, so we don't have this continuously backtrack of that can't be right or things like that. Yes, but we know. But this is how we control it.
Yeah,
I think that's
absolutely. Yeah. And then you could say don't give up on your common sense. I mean, it's still because you could say that I even see more the tendency as, okay, that's a black box, that's okay. So it's 2,000. That's perfect. Let's purchase that, or instead saying, or you could say the whole project around a new AI setup in supply chain. Okay, it's something AI. It's a black box, so you don't need to explain anything because we can't explain anything. So let's just go ahead and do it and spend a lot of money on that. I mean, let's build the business case. What are we trying to solve? How is it actually going to solve it? Then we know that there is a network, a deep learning network box that we cannot understand, but what we can certainly understand is what do we put into it, how do we validate the output, how do we fence the output, and how do we make alerts around the output so we can trust it. And that is still, common sense and business cases still rule.
Yeah. I think I like that advice. Just keep your common sense.
Yeah.
But,
a bit trivial,
but it's so valid. Yeah. Good. I think that's really good advice out there, Benjamin. Maybe as a last point here today, talk a bit about where do you see this going now? There's so much stuff coming out. I think I saw a very interesting example of ChatGPT here, where within a short period of time, how much had that improved? It answered on the same questions, basically. So things are moving rapidly here. Where do you see it from the state we're in now within supply chain planning and looking a few years ahead?
I guess the best advice is that we know it's going to change dramatically.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to say where this will go. And you could say what we have been talking about today is surely at least partly wrong in 2 years. So yes. we need just to follow this very closely, and you could say the advice and the ways that we set this up and use the AI will change basically from quarter to quarter almost as we speak about this or as time goes by. So I think you could say important part is certainly build the business cases and make sure that you can run or get the business case for the fairly short time horizon. So if it needs to take 5 years before it turns out that you have a positive business case, you probably shouldn't do it in this space because it's going to look very different in 2 years.
Yeah.
But you could say making sure that things like master data is getting better, etc. I mean, those are things that you can certainly do, and then make sure that you can free up time. So you automate as much as possible with the possibilities right now with a short time to business case. Then you free up the resources that can then help you with the next steps. What will be there in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, etc.
Yeah.
So we need to be quick on our feet here and harvest the results fast.
Yeah. I think it's the worst advice we have had in a podcast is that everything we're going to say is outdated in 2 years' time, but it's the honest truth. So, and that's how it is. I think, Benjamin, thank you so much for your input. I think it was very interesting for people, and my takeaways anyway from this discussion is very remembering the steps we talked about in the beginning and how to utilize those, where I think people really, number 1, 2, and 3, they are pretty much spot on. They know they have to do something. They might build a business case. They might find out where to hit the most, but they forget or at least don't build in the fencing of this and remember how it changes and how we still need the human touch. Very, very excellent. So message from Benjamin and me, don't treat it like magic. Make sure that we utilize the power of AI. I think that's in a good way in our planning. So thank you very much, Benjamin.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us again here today. We appreciate you being with us, and of course appreciate any feedback you might have, any topics you might have for future topics here on the S&OP Masterclass would be highly appreciated. So just reach out to Benjamin and I. If you have something interesting that you wish to discuss, we'll be happy to connect. And also, of course, if you want to know more about Roima or what the things we do, drop into our website and have a look. We'll be happy to talk to you. But thanks for your time here today. Have a wonderful day out there, and we hope to see you soon again.